March 3rd is the birthday of my dad, Petko Yusunov, and I wanted to say a few words to remember him. Why on LinkedIn? First, because he's a scientist and medical doctor, and second, because I'm going to say something about his influence on my professional path, and that reflects on the influence that fathers have on the professional path and life of their children. It has been almost 14 years since my dear dad passed away, and so I think with time the loss and the pain doesn't get less but actually gets bigger, because you start to miss the person even more, and sometimes I wish I could tell him something, or just for him to give me a hug and encouragement. What I want to say is that I read in a magazine in Style an article, "How has your father influenced you?" And different notable people reflect on the effect that their fathers had on their lives. I have to say that my father has left an enormous impact on my life, and not only for giving me life, for which I'm thankful, but as a little girl he taught me to read. Then he bought me ice skates when I was 5 years old. He encouraged me when I was in school. When I was a teenager, I think then when teenage girls define their identity, I was maybe more close with my mom. But when it came time for me to choose a profession, I think this was also a desire of my mom. My dad was the person who was always giving me advice and giving me a direction in life with respect to career. And I first want to show a picture of my dad. Here he is. And some of you know him, that he was a notable scientist. He was a medical doctor, then started to work as a surgeon, and then became a pharmacologist. And he worked for many years in the US at the NIMH. And in the 70s, with Professor Ben Wise, my dad isolated the multiple forms of cyclic nucleotide phosphodiesterase from rat brain using polyacrylamide gel electrophoresis. And even when I was coming as a scientist by myself at the Wistar Institute, my dad gave me this paper. It is from Biochimica and Biophysica Acta on the separation of the multiple molecular forms of cyclic adenosine monophosphate phosphodiesterase in rat cerebellum by polyacrylamide gel electrophoresis. And now we know that these cyclic nucleotide phosphodiesterases are important in many biological processes. Their second messengers regulate the levels of second messengers, and their inhibitors can be used as drugs for depression, schizophrenia, for Alzheimer's, in cardiology, and they have many uses. But I think that my father and Professor Weiss haven't been given the necessary recognition because they were the first people that isolated the cyclic nucleotide phosphodiesterases. And to say that I wanted to be an artist. First I wanted to be a dancer, a ballet dancer, but because I had a chronic kidney condition, I couldn't do a lot of physical exercise as a girl, so that ruled out a profession with a lot of dancing, and I wanted to be an artist. And I took classes in art, and in high school I was preparing to study art after I graduate high school. But when I was 15 years old, my father took me out on a walk and he asked me what I want to do for a profession. And I told him that I want to become an artist. And he advised me that artists have a beautiful profession, but it is not stable. Oftentimes, it's difficult to find a stable job, and so you might have difficulty supporting yourself or your family. And he advised me to choose a profession which is to help people, such as medicine, which is a very beautiful profession, and I can still draw in my spare time. For example, I can draw atlases. And I have a feeling that this was not only his decision, it was the decision of my mom too, because she's a medical doctor. And so I didn't have much saying in the matter, and I'm happy to do what my parents advised, and I studied biology and chemistry, and I passed the medical school entrance examination with excellent grades, and I became a medical doctor. But what the future has shown is that I do have time to draw, I have time to dance, and in fact in medicine I have drawn the brain in figures for publications. It is different, and it's interesting that I still have had to look for a job many times, and I think that maybe I'm an artist in my soul, in my heart, and this is why my profession is more unstable like that of an artist. I don't know. So my dad wanted me to read a lot, to study. He liked reading books, and he never wanted us kids to stay idle at home. And I want to show, this is my father's doctorate. It's in Bulgarian, which I took with me when I came here as a scientist. It is cyclic 3'5' adenosine monophosphate, biochemical, pharmacological, and clinical aspects. This was the subject of his research. And one book he gave to me when I was coming here, even before I took my ECFMG exams and decided to do psychiatry residency. This is a book from a professor. She's from the Medical University of Pleven, Dr. Machirova. It's called The Childhood Complexes. She's a psychiatrist. And the book is from 1996. And I think that I owe my love of psychiatry due to my dad, because when he was a scientist at NIMH, at first his laboratory was at St. Elizabeth's Hospital in Washington, D.C., which is a historic hospital, and we used to visit him with my brother and my mother there. And so I think I have grown up with pharmacology and with psychiatry and with medicine, which has made me love it and for which I'm very thankful. And one more thing I want to share about my dad is how he taught me that sometimes it's more important to show up and not to be perfectly prepared, because he thought that I'm a little bit of a perfectionist, which I have been told later on. I like to have all of the details worked out, but as we know, you can never be perfect. There is always something, and you learn this in the process of doing things. And it's good to know it so that you're not paralyzed and don't take the necessary action. I was in high school and I liked swimming. I was on a swimming team and our team was competing, and I don't swim well backstroke. But there was no one from my team besides me that day in the competition, and so I had to compete with two other teams. And I didn't want to, but my dad told me to try. I was afraid, but I tried, and the matter was for me to finish and not to drown, because I don't swim well backstroke. And they told me that they could see a lot of foam, and everyone from my team, including my dad, was cheering for me to finish and not to give up. And although I was a lot behind in time after the first two people competing who finished, I did finish, and I had a medal, third place swimming backstroke. And even my father liked to point out that if someone doesn't believe that I can swim backstroke, they can see my medal. So that taught me that sometimes, even if you're scared, you're not fully prepared that you can do something, it's good to show up and to give your best. And so with these thoughts, I'm very thankful for my wonderful father. He was a wonderful father not only to me, to my brother and my sister, and besides giving us direction in life and in our profession, he was helping our mom to cook and take us to museums on Saturdays and Sundays. He checked the homework of my brother. In other words, he was always a very loving and caring father. Thank you.